We're very, very happy to have a fantastic panel here with us today that will go through each of the themes and really look at their take-home messages. And we hope that we will have some time also for you to maybe ask some questions that you have maybe outstanding from the various sessions that you attended. With so many sessions ongoing and so many of us wanting to attend so many, we do hope that this will give you an opportunity to get a full flavour of the event, just in case you didn't get to see what you would have liked to, and hopefully give you some food for thought as you leave the conference this year, and how to think about your feedback as well, and what you've learned, what you would like to learn more about, because that's incredibly important for us in EURORDIS to understand what your needs are and to ensure that we are meeting those needs. So firstly, we're going to have a video from George Freeman, who is the UK Minister for Life Sciences, and he's going to address us now. So thank you.
Well, hello, and I'm sorry I can't join you today in person for this 8th European Convention on Rare Diseases and Orphan Products. But I wanted, as the UK's First Minister for Life Sciences, to signal my and our support for the work that you're doing and our commitment to help the European movement for progress in both research and treatment for patients with rare diseases. We all know that the rare disease sector goes right to the heart of the issues confronting the life science sector more generally. An increasing genomic basis for drug discovery and the use of big data, increasing role of tissues and patient studies, patient-centered translational medicine right at the heart of the beginning of the discovery process, and a greater role for patients in research as well as in treatment, and coming together to work together to support reimbursement and the important role of patients in helping governments put together a proper strategy for rare disease from cradle to grave. And that's why this movement and this collaboration is so important. I see in my travels around Europe the importance of pooling our resources in research, but also working together for implementing the uptake of rare disease treatments in our respective healthcare systems. This is an area where Europe is making strides and leading the world through our collaboration. Here in the UK, we've done our bit. We've launched a rare disease strategy. We continue to putting £1 billion into our National Institute for Health Research clinical infrastructure at the heart of the NHS. We've put another £250 million into our groundbreaking 100K genome program, sequencing the full genome and combining it with phenotypic data from 100,000 NHS patient genomes with rare diseases and cancer as the initial focus. And we are, through the NHS, pursuing our rare diseases strategy, and through specialist commissioning, making sure we're updating our systems to listen to what patients are telling us. The patient voice goes right to the heart of this agenda, both in research on consent for tissues and data and volunteering on genome studies, and in making representations through our health systems on appropriate care pathways. So we need to put the patients right at the heart of this agenda, which I know has been a big part of your work and focus today. I look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead, and in case there's any doubt, that's why I and this government are campaigning for us to remain in the European Union so that we can help play our part in making sure that Europe leads in rare diseases in the 21st century, and that we have an appropriate regulatory environment for the use of genomics and data and the clinical trials that we need to do. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to working with you.
And now we're going to have a presentation or a talk from one of our patient representatives, Tom Cooley, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is representing the UK Thalassemia Society. And he is going to talk to us about what his take-home messages from the past 2 days have been. So Tom, you're very welcome to the podium.
Ma'am, I told you I can't speak right now. I'm on stage. Yes, I'm fine. I'll call you back. Okay, bye. Hello, everyone. Sorry about this. You know what mums are like. My name is Tom Koukoulis, and I'm representing the UK Thalassemia Society. I live with beta thalassemia major. For those not familiar with thalassemia, I'll borrow a page from Dennis Costello's book. He told me that people understand things with similarities and differences. So thalassemia is like sickle cell, but different. I'm honored to have been invited to say a few words about my experience at this conference. And I'm particularly happy that it's happening here in Edinburgh. I used to live here, and I have so many great memories from this city. I had a heart failure here, I was gay bashed here, I even caught my first sexual transmitted disease here. I'm joking, it wasn't the first. So now that I have your attention, I have to say that I'm taking away quite a few things from this conference. I've been tweeting about most of them, and they very much boil down to this. I'm grateful for EURORDIS and for helping patients' voices heard. I am very pleased to see patient involvement in so many ways. Also, at one of the tutorials, I mentioned the exclusion of trans people from a project, and someone said I focused on a small minority. What I would like to say is that we're all part of a minority, each of a rare diseases minority. And as Professor Tom Shakespeare said in his presentation, our strength and power lies in working together under the rare disease umbrella. And being a bit of an activist, I say we need to realize our collective power and put pressure on all relevant systems based on our experience and have our voice heard to address patient needs. And to borrow a quote from Karen Ayak, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly, if a clinician tells you that something is impossible, don't listen to them. Or as I have been saying, don't take no as an answer from your doctors. The times I had to fight with my doctors. And finishing off, speaking of game changers, our organization, the UKTS, has recently produced clinical guidelines for the treatment of thalassemia. That's game-changing in that it's clinical guidelines produced by patients with the advice of clinicians and not the other way around. Thank you very much for listening, and EURORDIS for inviting me to speak. If you want to follow our work, we're on more social media at UKTHAL, that's UKTHAL. We couldn't get UKTS as a username, as that was taken by the UK Transsexual Society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, for setting the scene for our discussion this afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome our panel. Our panel have been very much involved in developing the content for the themes that we've all attended over the past 2 days. But first of all, I'm actually going to go first to theme 2, to Alastair Kent, who discussed game changers in diagnosis. Many of you will know Alastair. For those of you who don't, Alastair Kent is an OBE, and he's the director of the Genetic Alliance UK, the national charity of over 180 patient organisations supporting all of those affected by genetic conditions. So your thoughts, Alastair?
Yes, thank you very much, Avril. I was sitting through the theme 2, the importance of diagnosis, and a number of, I think, key messages came out of the excellent presentations that we listened to. Diagnosis is a potentially life-changing event for families. When you know you have a child or a family member where there's something that you can see is seriously wrong, but you don't know what it is, you don't know what the implications are, then you search for a diagnosis. And that diagnosis can bring with it opportunities. It can bring with it insights that you wouldn't have. It can enable you to understand what's happened to you. It can enable you to plan for the future in a way that you can't do when you don't have a diagnosis. It can also bring devastating news. It can confirm that you or your child or your loved one does have a life-limiting disease, that they are going to progress and that their life may be short and impaired by all sorts of currently unavoidable developments. So from the diagnostic theme, the key messages are, first of all, that we need to improve the speed and accuracy with which we are able to make a diagnosis. Too many patients spend too long, too many families spend too long waiting for that news, not knowing what to expect, not knowing how they can cope with it. We also need to improve the ability by which we transfer scientific understanding into clinical practice. We need to make sure that our clinical laboratories are equipped with the necessary technology, with the personnel, with the skills, the knowledge, the experience to be able to give accurate, reliable information for clinicians and for patients and families to act on. In a research laboratory, you're allowed to make mistakes because you're dealing with uncertainty. You're creating knowledge, not necessarily transmitting it immediately. In a clinical laboratory, the consequences of a mistake can be devastating. So we need to make sure that when we do generate new knowledge, it is translated into clinical practice in ways that are robust and that we can all rely on. And we also need to be able to address the inequity that exists across Europe and around the world. Unfortunately, what you can access by way of services and support in order to get you to the point of diagnosis often depends as much on where you live as what condition you have and you're affected by. Too many people in too many countries struggle to get to the point where a clinician can work with them and say, we know what this is and we know what we can do about it. So we need to address the scientific research that will produce the robust diagnostic techniques. We need to address the infrastructure concerns that will ensure that those robust diagnostic techniques are able to be delivered in a competent clinical setting. And we need to address the inequalities that mean that for too many people in too many parts of Europe and the rest of the world, their access to information, their access to understanding is constrained not by what we know or what we don't know, not by our current scientific opportunities to discover, but simply by the inequalities that families face based on geography, wealth, and other non-relevant non-clinical factors. So those are the take-home messages from our strand, and I hope that we can work together to progress them and address them in ways that will ensure that families are likely to be able to access timely, accurate, reliable diagnoses universally.
Thank you, Alastair. We're going to move now to theme 1, and Hugh Dawkins was responsible for that theme. So, Hugh, what do you think were the game changers? What came out of your session? And just to say that Hugh, for those of you who don't know him, is a PhD, is the Director of the Office of Population Health and Genomics at the Health Department of Western Australia. So you're very welcome.
So thank you, Avril. Our theme was, theme 1 was the game changers in research, and it won't surprise you to hear that the game changers in research are not very different from the game changers that Alastair described. And I present them from the perspective of, if you're a researcher and you're involved in research, then the game changers is achieving is not about the diagnostics, it's about a diagnosis. And if you have that as a firm vision, then you will be working with the clinical community and the patient community to achieve an accurate and an early diagnosis. This is still, out of all of the themes and out of all of the discussions across these 2 days, this is still the most defining moment, is that an accurate diagnosis. It's the portal to the patient's best care. And so from a research perspective, what can you focus on to help to achieve that? You can focus on analytics, and you can focus on bioinformatics, and you can focus on a whole lot of other tools. But really the objective of that is a safe, an accurate and an early diagnosis. And works and it addresses the needs of the patient. It addresses the needs of a health system. It addresses the needs of industry in doing this. And so it is probably the most, it is the standout theme or issue in terms of a game changer. The second game changer is clinical data. There's a need for clinical data so that we can actually, it relates to and is related